do the disclaimer.
You are live.
Oh my goodness.
Here we are.
Yay!
Hi, I
Good to
know.
see all of you again.
Good to see you
Yeah.
guys.
This is exciting.
I know. We're going to see how this goes today. Our
I hope
first
my inner
live
monologue
event.
still works.
You hope your inner monologue still works. Let's cross our fingers for that, Zach. All right.
John waved bye-bye to that long ago.
That's true. All right. So let me just make
Maybe.
our introductions here. Here today, we have the wonderful Dr. Jon Grayson, noted author and OCD expert, right? And then we have Mr. Zach Pacha, who is now a co-chair of the National Social Anxiety Center, also really incredible OCD expert. And me, I'm Dr. Katy Manetta. Don't raise your eyes at the. I'm Dr. Katy Manetta, and we're here to talk about all things OCD. And we have some wonderful questions from one of our viewers, Luigi, to tackle today. But we'll also try to have time for taking other questions if time allows for that. Just as a brief disclaimer at the beginning here, we want to make sure that everybody knows that this is not mental health treatment, that we're not establishing any sort of a therapeutic relationship here by this video. And this isn't a replacement for that mental health help, and that if you are having mental health problems, you really should contact a mental health professional. This video is more intended to be hopefully informative, but also entertaining. And if there is a real emergency, mental health emergency, we encourage you to go to your nearest emergency room or dial 911. So
we like to think that the information in this video may direct you towards proper treatment, because there are good treatments and bad treatments out there, and so we're hoping this gives you some useful guidelines in what you're pursuing.
It's true. It's true. And I don't know if you guys saw, but Luigi is here with us in the comments.
I have seen that. Yep.
Isn't that nice? So I'm excited that he's here for us to hear our answers to his questions. And we've already been in discussion about these issues this morning. So why don't we start? Zach, why don't you go ahead and at least read sort of the first part of the question, or do we want to read through the whole thing and then respond to it at once, or what do we want to do? Take it
piecemeal.
Piecemeal. All right, let's do it.
Sure. All right. So, very informative video. Will you be doing another QA soon? He says, I have a few questions. Here's the first part. One of them is about rituals that have to do with following things in a certain order. As someone with chronic OCD, I'm frequently forced to engage in the ritual of completing things in a certain manner or order. And if I screw something up along the way, I'm compelled to start it all over until I get it right. I know Howard Hughes also dealt with this problem. For me, the trigger is when I shower. If I'm showering and don't do things in the order I sent them out to do, I have to start over, or else I feel dirty and unwashed. How does ERP tackle this, since I can't shower in front of the therapist?
You know, there was only, may I say something? There's only one statement. There was only one, Luigi, there was only one statement that you said that was accurate in that, because I think language is incredibly important. And I think we fool ourselves with language. So one of the things you said that was true is you said, if you don't do the rituals the right way, I feel dirty. And you know what? I can never argue that you feel a certain way. But you said you're forced to do things, you're compelled to do things, you have to do things. So I'm just wondering, if I had a gun pointed at your foot and said, if you do this next ritual, I'm going to shoot you in the foot, would you do it? And if you did the ritual just to be convinced, so I shoot you in the foot and you realize I'm going to keep doing that, will you do the second ritual? I like to believe that you would probably choose that, given the idea of somebody shooting you, yep, you're not going to do the ritual. Where if you're compelled or forced, you would have no choice. So again, if I ask you, hold your breath for 20 minutes or I'm going to shoot, I think it's highly likely you have to breathe. Under that circumstance, you're in deep trouble. So, it would always be useful to say something like, I feel like I have to, or I choose to, because actually, in the case of the gun at your foot, in that case, you choose, I'd rather, not get shot, so I'll put up with the anxiety. So it's kind of always the case. There's a certain level of feelings I do not want to put up with. And to avoid those feelings, I'd rather give in. Now, it's not like an easy la-di-da decision. It's a painful decision. However, you kind of forget the fact that the other choice you make, giving in, is equally painful. Otherwise, life would be happy and you wouldn't be speaking to us. I have a bunch of other thoughts, but I'm going to see if Zach and Katy have something they want to add before I.
Well, let me add this. I mean, there's a, when
Please.
we say OCD, the compulsion, right? I mean, it's because people feel really compelled to do these things.
Do you know what you said?
What?
You accidentally just agreed with me.
Oh.
You said people feel compelled. They do feel compelled.
Compelled.
Not the
Feeling
feeling.
compelled.
I was
and being.
agreeing with you.
Oh, okay, good.
I'm not going to disagree with. Well, I would disagree with you actually under certain circumstances. There are some times that I do disagree with you, John. But let's
Like before we get on publicly, yeah.
I know
Yes.
that's right.
Lots
That's
of
right. But no,
disagreements.
I do agree with you, John. And when people feel really compelled to do something, it can be a really difficult choice. It's a very painful choice because what it often feels like for people is that if I don't complete these series of rituals in this particular manner, then it's not going to leave me alone, right? It's going to pester me until I'm just, so overwhelmed that I can't even get through my day. And so a lot of people are like, well, let me just get my compulsions over with. Let me do all of these things in the right way so then I can move on with my life. But as
Which
we
usually
know,
results in endless rituals, so it doesn't stop leaving them alone. And if you're lucky enough to complete them, well, there's the next one that's coming. Because, if it really worked well, don't listen to us. Just do your ritual and be done.
That's right. Exactly right. But and so it's such an unfortunate thing, but we know this about OCD, that wherever your rituals are today, imagine where they were 2 years ago, 5 years ago. And typically what you'll notice is that, rituals change over time, they morph, and they're not a sort of static experience. And usually people's rituals become more and more extreme over time because finding relief is more fleeting as time goes on, right?
Well, OCD is really clever. For every logical answer, there's a new what if.
Yeah.
Always.
So let's make sure we're answering Luigi's question. Okay, does he have to shower? Okay, Zach, you go ahead, but I want to make sure we answer. Does he have to shower?
Katy, don't worry, we're going to get there. We have plenty of time.
All right.
Time out. Let me ask this part.
Go, Zach.
Because the last question's funny, and I think we have probably a pretty good way to answer it. So how do you actually do ERP since you can't shower in front of a therapist? Which I think is clever and funny, but I think we probably have some actual answers for that.
Yes.
Well,
you could shower in front of your therapist. I would not recommend it though. No.
I'm sure we could think of some way around loopholes around it that actually are legal and not bad.
Well,
I would like to point out. Sorry, what quick?
Go ahead, Zach.
I'm at the bat signal. Zach's talking. One thing is what the pandemic has taught me is that I don't have to be even in the same room with someone to do really effective therapy. In fact, I don't really do in-person therapy now. So you, in theory, could be showering, but I could be on a camera not looking. I could be, doing. There's lots of scenarios. Audio. There's lots of scenarios for that, and the work you do before and all the other work you do, because as you'll hear in his answer or his questions, it isn't just about the shower.
No.
And most of the time, OCD isn't just about one little thing. If it was, that'd be really easy and easier. And I think quick treatment would be a lot quicker. But it's usually pretty global. So just because they have that area where you're like, what the hell? How do you do treatment in that area? And it's going to apply. All of the things apply. Uncertainty is uncertainty. Uncertainty is everywhere. There you go. That's my answer.
So, and I wanted also just to mention this, right? So therapy traditionally is going to be an hour a week, sometimes a little more or less, but traditionally an hour a week. And so true ERP has so much more to do. It has a lot to do with what's happening in session, but so much more to do with what's happening between sessions. And so oftentimes we're spending our session really preparing people to do exposure work in between sessions. We do exposure work in session for sure, but there's so much that happens from one week to the next. And I would argue that, preparing somebody to take the shower in the wrong way, right? To do things out of order on purpose, and to start working towards this mindset of tolerating that feeling of being dirty, right? Right now he frames dirty as being a bad thing, something that he's moving away from. And we really have to work towards approaching dirty and allowing ourselves to feel dirty, because it's that feeling that is going to lead to improvements in outcomes.
111 hours
What's that?
in a week.
Oh, yeah. And only one of them is spent with the therapist.
No,
I like that
I
number.
already minus the one.
Oh, you minus
And that's
one.
assuming you get 8 hours of sleep. Which, who the hell does? I
Did
sure
you
don't.
seriously just do that fast math there, Zach?
No, I used the calculator.
Oh.
Making some dubious assumptions.
Very dubious assumptions.
So to build on what Zach and Katy said, coming up with exposures for Luigi's problem is actually simple. I mean, that's a not, it's an important part of treatment, but it's not the most important. At this moment in time, if Luigi was presented to me, all the exposures that I can come up with, and I can come up with a lot, I wouldn't permit him to do any of them. Because before they can do exposure, they have to agree with the goals of treatment. And Luigi, what you're describing is, how can I do exposure and then, no offense, stay sick at the same time?
Yeah.
At the core, as Zach mentioned, of all OCD is I'm trying to be 100% certain. So the first thing we're trying to get clients to agree to is that they're going to learn to live with uncertainty. You can't decide to live with uncertainty, because if you can, cool, you're done today, everything's good. You decide to learn to live with it, and that's painful. Going through therapy is going to be as painful as ritualizing. And the only difference is one leads to endless rituals, one leads to an end of rituals. You've always tried the endless ritual one, and it hasn't worked for you. So you first have to decide you're willing to be uncertain, meaning you might be dirty. Now, exposure, we're actually going to bring in some certainty. You actually are going to be dirty. Now, what you don't make clear, and you actually don't have to tell us because it doesn't matter. For some people, they just can't stand the idea of dirty. For other people, there would be other ramifications. I'll get sick, or I'll make other people dirty, and I don't want to do that. But it doesn't matter, because we would be risking getting sick. Your inability to be certain is normal, because the only people who researchers show, the only people who feel certain about anything are stupid. So I can talk about odds, but low probability is not no probability. Low probability events happen. So you would have to be deciding, my goal is to be uncertain. And yes, the goal is, I'm going to be learning to live forever in dirty world. Not like, I do treatment and stop. So yeah, and I see what triggers you, and that's fine. But but it triggers you because you don't want that to be true. And we're saying, if that's your goal, to not feel dirty, then there's no hope for you. I'm telling you, there's a way to get better, and you can actually do it. But you can't, you're like an alcoholic who says, I want to get drunk without having an alcohol problem. Yeah, we don't know how to do that.
So Luigi says, and to your point, Jon, right? So what Luigi says is just the thought of being dirty and contaminating his belongings is what really triggers him.
Yeah.
And we have this phenomenon with contamination type OCD, right? That the idea that it spreads, right? So once something is dirty, then it's going to spread. But
our goal is to spread it. I mean, I'm sorry. our, treatment, so yeah, before I start doing treatment with you is helping you convince you of the goal of treatment. How are we going to convince you of the goal of treatment? And there are a couple of 3 areas that are very broad. So they're not going to convince you today because I don't know, you're not going to go into detail, but here are the 3 areas that I always work with patients. How is OCD messing up your life? What are you losing to OCD? Because if you don't take this goal, that's forever. And the second one, how, if you have anybody you love around you, how is your OCD hurting them? How are you making them miserable, or how, loved ones? So how's it hurting you? How's it bad? And the third one, the killer.
Mm.
How are your rituals not working? Because you already know what I'm about to say. No matter what ritual you come up with, you can find a what if and another reason to do it, because it never is fully complete. So the goal is getting to the point where you feel hopeless about ever being able to achieve the goal of being free of dirty and being free of the thought of being dirty. So as long as that's not your goal, my treatment's not going to have anything to do with exposure and response prevention. My treatment is, let's talk about getting you to that point. Most people, that's 1 or 2 sessions. I have had people where we work on that for 3 months, where they come to the logical conclusion there's no way to get what they want. And the thing about logic and emotions, we get a choice. Logic doesn't change feelings. It just gives me a reason to go against feelings. Up to now, there's no reason to listen to the logic that none of this matters, because it's just, the suffering you do when you give in. So it's like, well, that doesn't help. And what we're
Well,
saying is,
he's saying
if
he's
you'll put
suffering
up with
right now
this,
too, so
yeah,
that makes sense.
but if
Yeah.
you'll put up with this, we can get you to that point. But that point comes not because I'll feel not dirty. The point is I'll live being dirty. And just so you know, there's this horrible, disgusting thing I'm going to tell you. I like the
Just
way Zach.
one?
Just
Just
well,
one?
just one. Well, I
Okay.
want to know.
That's not true.
Technically, in some ways, it's 3.
All right.
OC therapists, we do what we tell you to do. So basically, by your
Yeah.
standards, all of us are dirty. I do not wash my hands, period.
This is true.
If I'm making meatballs, my hands are greasy. Yes, I wash that off. I don't want to. If I'm working in the garden, I don't want to
Some
get
of us are a little
clean.
more hardcore on this position than John. Let me just say that.
However, I don't. And all the exposures that are really gross, I will also do with you. The only time I won't do it is if the client feels it makes them safer. When I was in a
Right.
practice with my wife, Kathy, I would have clients go, "Does your wife know what you do?" And I'd say, like, yes. And they go, like, "I don't believe you." So if she was free, I'd call her in. And and they'd look at her and say, "Do you know what he does?" And she'd look down and go, "Uh-huh." And you still kiss him. Then she'd lean over and give me a kiss, and go back to her. So although she's not as gross as me, she essentially lives with that because she knows what I do, and she doesn't like, okay, John, you're kind of a pig, so you have to take a shower. But I come in and our whole house is contaminated. And the thing is, the entire world is contaminated.
Yeah.
So the it's an illusion that anybody is not contaminated and clean. At this moment, with every breath you take, you are breathing in a few 100,000 different varieties of microbe.
Yeah.
Most of them are harmless. Some you actually need. Some are pathogenic. And Lysol does not kill them all. There are a bunch that survive with Lysol, and they're not necessarily the good ones. So
And John, one of the things that John's pointing out here, right, is the incomplete nature of whatever rituals Luigi is engaging in, right? That he's taking it this far, but how much further could he take it? We've all had these patients that, bleach sprays are their best friend, right? I've had patients that do some combination of bleaching and boiling of credit cards or other objects that they take outside of the house, and that there's a tremendous restriction, like Ziploc bags, etc., to try to have this image of things not contaminating their environment or not contaminating their family. And the truth is like, look how far we can go. I mean, we can't boil ourselves. Well, we could, but once again.
But also, there's actually a layer of dirt and microbes living on our skin that help protect us. So actually, in his cleanliness, he certainly opens himself up. Now, he might not care about getting sick from infection,
Right.
because it's just the idea of dirt, but he's actually making it worse. I don't know what he does about the dust floating in the air, because the air is actually full of microscopic dust that is
Oh yes,
basically
we
made
all
of.
have them. The patients who have the air filtration systems.
Yeah, but it doesn't get it all out, so there's
So
still little pieces of dead skin, because that's mostly dust, and like little crap from mites, which is
Mhm.
also, so we're just breathing and walking in a sea of it. It's just that our eyes don't see it. So it's an illusion that we're ever clean. And if we're going for illusion, I hate to base my life on illusion. So your very first step, Luigi, I mean, it's a difficult one. It's like giving up this fantasy. Now, you can't give it up today. The best you could do is say, oh, Darren, that makes sense. And like, I'm going to have to start learning how to do it. Learning. I'm going to have to start accepting the idea that ultimately, this is what I'm going to have to do. I'm going to have to learn to live in dirty world. Now, the good news, you're actually always in dirty world. You're actually always dirty. And it's an illusion that you're clean, because if we actually look at it, it will be that. So, yes, right. Luigi wrote that,
yeah,
that yes. Now, when you do think you're going to, yes, ultimately you're going to be doing things out of order. And you know what's great?
Well, let's make sure
You,
everybody can see Luigi's comment.
yes,
Oh
right. Like
yeah.
Luigi's comment. Yes.
Oh, look, and Valentina's back, one of our other viewers.
I
Isn't
know.
that so
Welcome,
nice?
Valentina. Thank
Welcome
you.
back, Valentina. Okay, so
Okay.
this is a question, right? We get it a lot. First, I must accept that I cannot be 100% clean no matter what I do. Yes, he's right. He's hearing you. He's hearing us. Okay,
Yeah.
and then
I would just say learn to accept, because it's not a binary. It's a very difficult thing.
There's
And
it's
the
not a
only other thing,
checkbox.
what's
right.
really beautiful is, as Luigi could tell us, taking a perfect shower is torture,
Oh, yeah.
because you can't get it right.
Holy cow.
But exposure is purposely taking a wrong shower. And you know what? It won't feel comfortable, but it is so easy to do a wrong quick shower
Yes,
because it's wrong. It's like, yes, I'm not cleaning and touching the soap on every part of my body. I'm kind of hoping by the end of the week, I've probably gotten everything, because the purpose of a shower is not to get clean.
no
The
law.
purpose
Well,
of a
for
shower,
treatment, it's not.
no,
Oh,
it never is.
Right. You're right.
You're not. The
Good point,
purpose of a
John.
shower is not to get clean, is to be cleaner than when I started. Right? Because by whatever the standard of clean is, I am never really perfectly clean. There's always something I'm not. I can be cleaner, but never clean.
And one of the things we talk about a lot, right, are this idea of like restricting use of soap for a period of time, right? The no soap shower, just the rinse.
Now you're going into the details,
I know.
but I think the very first step is understanding all the ways, understanding how difficult it'll be to walk around feeling dirty, wanting to really, OCD is such a. I always think of OCD as the OC demon,
Yeah.
because it's a very seductive devil. It makes all these promises, and in the end, you go to hell. So OCD is sitting there screaming at you. You're dirty, like you really want to walk around dirty. You're going to be dirty all day. You know what it's going to feel like to be dirty? I'm going to keep torturing you. And it's going to keep promising you, just take a shower, it'll be okay. And
if you can just get it right, if you can just get it right.
Yeah. So you'll, whatever you do, it's torture. And then you come out of the shower, and I would be amazed if, like, for the next hour after a shower, you are fine and relaxed. I'm thinking you're still got to be pretty avoidant and very careful, and you about the towel and where do I put on, and Lord knows how you sit down after a shower, because the rest of your apartment can possibly be as clean as you are coming out of the shower. So, you're already going into dirt. So it's an illusion. OCD is screaming so loud, and it's helping you avoid the truth of, like, as soon as you give me some, as soon as you listen to me on this, Luigi, I'm coming after you with that. It's an always demanding, and and every now and then, actually, the rituals pay off, but they pay off like a slot machine. You never win the big one where it's like, I'm rich now, I'm done. You win just enough to keep you coming back.
Coming back. Yeah.
Which is what
Oh,
you're
it's such
doing.
a good analogy. I haven't heard that one before, John. I'm sure
You haven't read his book then.
Does he use it in his book? I've read your book a million times. I'm just
Sorry.
getting
Zach gets an A for reading my book. You apparently fail because
I fail. Yes.
it's one of my old ones. It's like here's the thing. I have a limited repertoire. So when I have interns or something, by the end, it sounds great at first. By the end of the year, it's like he's saying that again. So I think it's a really good one. I feel confident it's good, but I think there's only like 30 minutes of me that doesn't exist in the book. So sorry. Look, she's turning as red as her lipstick.
I'm not red. You'll know it when I turn red. I'm partly Irish, so. All right, but I wanted
You're getting there.
Yeah.
Now you're doing it to me. Stop it. You both are terrible.
Hey,
Nice
we got
flush.
it. We got the tagline in. He said, "Stop it." Good job.
Oh, there we go.
And just like the tagline, we feel like to tell somebody with OCD, just stop it. I mean, it's like, cool, that'd be great if it worked. And so with you telling Zach and me to stop it is as useful.
My mom says that we're really not that funny. She watches our program and she says we're not really that funny.
I have many thoughts to that I'm going to keep to myself.
I think we're going to keep that to the after session.
Something to work on.
Some other future.
Look at Valentina. Look at Valentina.
Okay, wait, hold on. I want to finish with something because I think this is important. So Luigi is asking.
Oh.
What? No. What Luigi's saying is important.
Yeah,
so doing things out of order in the shower. There's any number of exposures that can be super helpful for somebody who has Luigi's type of problem, right? Doing things out of order. Agreeing to get out of the shower when you're dirty, setting time limits on the shower. I mean, there's any number.
No.
You don't like time limits, John?
Time limits only if I'm trying to shower wrong.
Yes.
If I have a 10-minute timeline and I'm trying to do it quick, I'm going to make myself crazy.
No, it would be a wrong shower.
If this was the soap.
Yeah.
I've just cleaned the upper part of my body there. That's it. Did I miss spot to that? Yep, maybe. So I'm going to clean my whole body like that. So pretty much in 1, maybe 2 minutes, I've soaked my body. I have not done a thorough job, so it's everywhere. I'm going to assume that, some water will, spread the soap over and wash off, and then I will be cleaner than when I started. And that's the world I'm going to learn to live in. That's uncomfortable, but and that's okay that it's uncomfortable. If you're afraid of cats and we have you buy a cat, your house is going to be like kind of scary for a while. We're going to get used to it. You may never love cats, but you may stop fearing them.
All right. Mm-hmm. Hold on. I want to make sure we get to, hold on. Okay.
So here's what I think I know where your head's at, Katie, because
go ahead.
We want to do all of Luigi's question,
yes,
right?
Exactly right. We want to finish with Luigi, and then I want us to talk about Valentina's question too, because she asked a question.
Okay.
But hold on. First, let's finish Luigi's questions.
Yes, that's where we're going to do it. Okay, so the second part of this, how does ERP help with false memory OCD? For example, if I wash my hands and 10 minutes later, I forget that I washed them, and so I proceed to wash them again, or else I feel dirty.
I'm going to jump in. Real quick.
I knew you would, John.
Sorry, because here's the thing.
A good one.
We have no trouble with the false memory. OCD is living with uncertainty, and it's like, it's more important to overcome OCD or not. So if I think that maybe I didn't wash my hands, I'm going to take the risk of not washing them because that'll be good treatment. And it'll be good treatment for my false memory. I mean, we could ask if we had we were going to bet your right arm, like we have it on film, and we'll show you the film after you make your bet. Do you bet, if you're betting your right arm, did you wash your hands or not? And if you guess wrong, we're chopping the arm off. You can pick whichever you want. If you don't bet at all, then we're just chopping it off. So you have to make the bet. If you make the bet that you wash them, well, then I'd say go with it. It's as good as it gets. If you're saying to me, you know what, I truly can't guess, we can flip a coin. I'm so unconfident that I'm leaving it to a coin toss. Well, okay, that tells me you really aren't sure, and that's really okay. We don't need you to remember because our thing is we're going to be dirty anyway, because there's not many times when washing hands is actually necessary. It just feels necessary. So in the goal of treatment, it's like, oh, okay, this is treatment. I'm learning to live with uncertainty, and here's another uncertainty I have. That's why I jumped in. Sorry.
That's okay. But I think Luigi brought up such a good point, which is this idea of the false memory, or when people say, oh, did I do that? Did I check the stove, etc. And I think we've all had the experience of OCD clients that take this to the nth, right? They actually film their stove, right? I've had now with everybody has a phone that they can take video. So they take videos of themselves washing something, of washing their hands, of locking the doors, so that they can refresh their memory on it later. Now, what's amazing though, right? Even with that video evidence, you'd think that would somehow eradicate uncertainty,
Nope.
but the truth is absolutely does not.
For every logical answer, there's a what if.
That's right.
Yep.
And so
Doesn't matter.
Luigi is at this point in his OCD, but it could go so much further, be so much more ritualized and compulsive, and still never bring him the certainty that he wishes he could have.
Because again, the research has shown that only people who are certain are stupid. So that's an area we can't help you with, Luigi.
Yep,
You're a smart guy. People with OCD tend to be above average intelligence.
That's right.
They make terrible cult followers. To be a cult follower, you have to ask no questions. So you're going to have to, the choice is be tortured or learn to live with uncertainty. It'll be torture to learn it, but it's the difference between an end of rituals and endless rituals.
Right.
I don't know if this will help also, Luigi. One, I really appreciate you being open and sharing this, because this is something I can already use in therapy with somebody, because they are going to be able to see, oh, okay, I'm not the only one that struggles when I'm in the shower. Right. Even though I've said it 2 or 3 times. Yeah. Doesn't matter. The fact that somebody else is out there doing this and talking while we're doing this is good. So, and I think all 3 of us would collectively say we've had people that have spent way longer than an hour in the shower as a ritual.
It can be worse.
Way worse.
Yeah. If you allow it to proceed, it can get much worse, for sure.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, let's read the last part of Luigi's.
Yep.
Did we answer Luigi's? Let me make sure we did. Did we? Yes, we did. I think so.
I think so.
False memory. Let's read the last parts of his question.
Okay, so finally, what does ERP look like when it comes to an OCD revolving around keeping objects in perfect condition? Does that mean intentionally getting these objects dirty for the purpose of exposing myself to the fear?
Yes.
I feel hesitant to get help through ERP because I don't like the fact that I'd be having to intentionally ruin objects for the purpose of getting over this fear.
It's interesting that he thinks that if an object's dirty, it's ruined.
Yeah.
Well, okay, hold on. Is he a collector of some kind, right?
I'm sorry if I have some dust on an object.
Yes.
I mean, after all, expensive.
Dust is one thing.
Okay,
no, but my son collects these figures, and those figures oftentimes really, he wants to put them behind glass. We've so far prohibited that, but he really would prefer, so that they aren't.
No, why do you prohibit it?
Oh, well, we really just don't have that much space in his bedroom. I don't know, John. We could talk about it for a while if you want to.
It's one thing if they're in the original package. But again, objects, and of course, if every object is precious to me, that's a problem because in my house things are going to get chipped or not. Right. So, and you know what? I would rather have at the base of an object that nobody can see a scratch.
Yes.
Than have OCD forever.
Me too. Yeah.
So, but I have plenty of non-destructive ways to put these things out of order and have them not perfectly clean, that in ways that if I have to sell them later as a collector really won't Luigi just wrote, I'm not a collector, but my OCD has been so extreme that I feel like an object's dirty, I don't want it and I want to get rid of it. And Luigi, here's the terrible thing about OCD. It's a choice.
Yeah.
Like you can sit, but the thing is, there's certain things I just can't do both ways.
Right.
So your choice is OCD forever or having imperfect objects. And again, you talk about feelings because, I don't know if you have a partner in life. I think if you have a partner, you're probably torturing the partner. Or if you don't have a partner, part of your decision is to be forever without a partner, which might be okay with you. But, I want you to not live in fantasy. If I do OCD, there are a bunch of things that are going to be true and permanent, highly likely, not 100%, but, so far you've discovered that what I'm suggesting is true. So you get to pick A or B. You don't get both. I don't get to be somebody who gets drunk all the time without becoming an alcoholic. It's like,
Right.
love the idea, but or I really love to eat, and I've been diet. I had 25 pounds that I successfully failed to diet with for 30 years, and it's only recently I finally dumped it. I don't like it. What I have to do to keep the weight off, but I do that. Yes, OCD is preventing you from having a partner. What, again, that initial
Happens a
question
lot.
I asked, what have you lost to OCD? That's part of the decision of keeping your OCD. And right, you can't have both. It's kind of like somebody says, I want to make a comfortable living, but I don't want to work. That might be possible, but good luck. And that's easier to do than what you're asking.
But I want to highlight part of what Luigi's saying, because I think we hear this a lot from people that suffer with OCD, which is that part of the need to do all the compulsions and rituals,
Part of the desire.
Part of the desire to do all the compulsion rituals is this fear of what comes next if I don't, right? And it's not necessarily like fear that something terrible is going to befall me. It's more, well, if I feel that this particular object has been contaminated or dirtied, then I'm going to have to get rid of it. And that means I'll have to get rid of all my laundry. That means I'll have to get rid of all my favorite
As opposed
outfits.
to, I'm going to keep it here and learn. I'm going to learn.
Right?
I'm going to
Yeah.
learn
to live with this being dirty in my environment, or the idea of the endless compulsion, right? This is the other thing I think we hear a lot of OCD sufferers fearing, is that if I let things get dirty, then I'm just going to have to compulse. I'm going to have to clean to try to get myself to the point that I'm not just letting all my stuff go.
And if he keeps with OCD, he gets to be alone forever.
Yeah.
That's a choice.
No,
Yeah.
we don't want that. So I want to point one more thing out about Luigi. Let me look at the time. Yeah. So at 2:45, he said, just the thought of me being dirty and contaminating my belongings is what's triggering me.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's been 15, almost 30 minutes now. You're still doing it. Do you feel any different? Do you feel less anxious, more anxious? It fluctuated, I bet.
And
That part I don't even really care about it. Yeah, and you've been talking about it. You haven't been avoiding it. So I mean,
he might be terribly triggered. So that would just prove he's doing an exposure right now.
Yep.
That's my point.
Exactly. And oftentimes this conversations with your therapist can be the first exposure point, right? Where you're actually thinking about doing this scary stuff. Go ahead, Zach. Sorry.
Well, if you can do this, I think you have a shot at doing ERP for sure.
Yeah.
Honestly,
Well,
I think you probably did way before this anyways. So
if the decision is made to live in the actual reality,
yes,
things are dirty. We're just doing it on purpose, which does bring me to Valentina.
Yeah.
Do you want to flash up what Valentina wrote?
Yeah, let me show this. It's great. Yep.
So I'm going to start and then let you guys talk because I never shut up.
Before you start, can I just for other viewers? So in a previous podcast, we talked about one of Valentina's concerns, and it had to do with asbestos.
That's
and kind of went on and on about that. So the fact that she's coming back, awesome. Appreciate it. And
you guys went on and on. I was very succinct. So go ahead.
And it sounds like there's more to do with maybe it's not necessarily asbestos, but chemicals or
Yeah, we didn't need that. Well, I could have answered her question without knowing that.
I know. It's for the audience.
No, the audience didn't need it either. Valentina, unlike you, was very succinct. I understood everything from what she wrote there because what she wrote were two really answerable questions. And I'm just going to give my opinion and then shut up, which will be shocking. How can I develop a sense of when it's okay? Well, when I'm doing treatment, it's not going to feel okay. It's going to feel wrong. You've been doing this for so long. There is no way for it to feel okay. You are basically going on the logic that I'm hoping the odds are in my favor, that it's a low probability event. My only evidence is most people don't do what I'm doing, and everybody is not dropping dead of cancer that I know. That's it. So it's like, not that it won't happen, but yeah. So you're not going to have a sense that it's okay. And then with regard to any unknown substance in public might be a carcinogen, I'll bring it home and spread everywhere. I really love that question because the truth is you're already doing that.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know where you live, Valentina, but unless you're living in the middle of Montana in the woods, you're walking in air that is full of carcinogens. Your house is not airtight, so it's full of carcinogens. And even if you have your nice air filters running 24/7, they're still coming in and getting spread. And that's just the stuff floating in the air. I don't know, if we're going to go to like what is carcinogenic in food, and we could say let's buy all organic, but there are some organic things that are also carcinogenic. So I don't know if you know a complete list of all foods that are carcinogenic, let alone which additives are carcinogenic and not. And you know what? Because California is crazy. It turns out in California we have Prop 7 that warns you about carcinogenic things. So I just looked buying something the other day and it's like, how can this be carcinogenic? So I had this Prop 65 warning. And the Prop 65 warning was not for the product. It's, oh, by the way, the labels on this bottle might be carcinogenic. For real. It's like, the materials used to make this labels might be.
And then we have the additional problem, right? That they're constantly changing the idea of what might be carcinogenic and what is not. Things that we thought aren't, and things that we thought aren't, whatever.
Yeah. So I think you don't have to go and, buy a slab of asbestos, powderize it and, snuff it. I think that would not be a good exposure.
No.
But the rest of it, yes, because it's actually unavoidable, what you do in an effort to not bring it in and spread it everywhere, I mean, what's really sad is you're not even doing enough. You'd have to be so much crazier to successfully do that. You would have to have a vestibule before you enter your house covered with plastic to try to keep the air in, strip down your clothing, walk on a set of plastic to the shower, take a really complete shower. It's a little problematic because as you're taking the shower, stuff's going to float off you and spread all over your house. But okay, then get your clean clothing, put on your gloves, roll up that plastic to put it in a garbage bag. And by the way, the clothes that are out in the vestibule, you're going to put those in a plastic bag so that you can then bring them to some cleaners so that then after the cleaners washes them, they'll be clean enough for you to take home and wash them at home. And
that's assuming that there are no carcinogens in the cleaning liquid.
Oh, wait. But that's why you wash them and get it home. But here's the thing. If you do all that, and I'm going to spare you, I can explain to you all the flaws in that of why it's still dirty.
Yeah.
So it's just pretending that I'm clean. It's just pretending this is enough.
And so the question of when it's okay, like developing a sense of when it's okay to forego any cleaning, right?
Well, initially we just do the risk. I mean, What saves all of us is what saves our children. Our children survive because of luck.
Yeah.
Most of the time, they don't crack their head on the stairs. They don't get kidnapped. They don't die of a dread disease. They don't get hit by a car. But sometimes it happens.
Right.
That's it. The only reason that they get saved, the majority of the time, it doesn't. We don't actually get to control it. And the same is true of us. So, yes, you're going to bring some carcinogens. And by the way, you act like it's magic because God forbid there's a carcinogen in your house. As soon as you walk out of your house, you're exposed to carcinogens all day because it's in the air you breathe, especially if you're in a city. So I don't know if you have the magic carcinogens that outside they made an agreement. We're not going to attack you unless you bring it home. So outside, you're safe from us, but as soon as you go in, it's on your body, your skin, we're sinking in. You breathe it in, we're getting your lungs. Like, I don't think we have smart carcinogens.
Not yet. Not yet.
It's possible.
As far as we know.
Because we have the AI carcinogens, but will they be good AI or bad AI?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think part of what Valentine is talking about also is sort of this process of sort of getting to a point where she feels comfortable knowing when to clean and when not to clean. And for our treatment purposes, are you interpreting it in a different way? Is that why you're shaking your head, Jon?
No, but I'm interpreting it as like the goal of comfort is a way long-term goal. You don't get there today.
You don't.
I mean, if you're afraid of cats, it's going to be a long time before I get you over the fear.
Right.
Yeah.
If you're an assault victim and something happened to you down the street, you may know that you're not getting assaulted when you go to that corner. It's going to be a long time before you don't get some negative arousal walking by that you kind of prefer to just even not walk there. We need you to go there, but we have to do all the painful work of getting to that point where not that the arousal and all the bad feelings are there, where I feel like I can cope with those feelings. That's my first step. I feel uncomfortable and I'm trying to cope with the fact that and why would I do that? Why would I take that risk? Because the alternative of the risk is a life of hell.
Yeah. I like the word tolerate. I mean, that's what we're teaching people.
That's what you do with Zach and I.
I know. It's part of my daily life here. But no, yeah. And
Good
so
news, you've gotten better at it. And
I know I have gotten better at it over time. But
exposure
just sort of
works.
As a treatment principle, to just sort of illuminate what Jon was talking about, the treatment principle is that we really focus first on changing the behavior and engaging in behaviors in a way that's different. If the expectation is that, and we used to think this, right? And you'll note that there are some therapists who still do this, that they think that if we just hang in there with an exposure for long enough that we're going to calm down and feel better about it. And the truth is that now we know that that's just not the case, and that's not even really the goal of exposure. We're not doing an individual exposure so that we calm down at the end of the exposure activity. We're doing exposure because over time it has been shown to improve tolerance of these unpleasant sensations.
And if it seems to you, let's say, that dirty world is an awful place, because I think we're touching on something that we've talked about before. We're talking about acceptance. Like that I want to learn to accept that. And in this Western world, everybody has this fantasy of acceptance is like Zen happy land.
Right.
So the first rule of acceptance that nobody's as good as Katy, Zach, or me. The first rule of acceptance sucks. Because acceptance always means that I'm going to choose to make the best of living in the second best world. I'm going to learn to live in dirty world.
Yeah.
I've lost a spouse. It's going to take a long time before I cope with that. But at some point, I want to reach the point where I'm going to have a good life without her. It's the second best life. And the reason we decide to work on living the second best life is the other one doesn't exist. And if fantasy really is sweet and wonderful, but it also never happens. So it's acceptance is like, oh wait, that's not the world I like. And it's like, I had a client who was kind of cute because whenever he would talk about something he wants, and I would kind of go, mention reality, he would go like, oh, I don't like that. And I'd always be like, yeah, what's the alternative? And it took a while, but he got to the point where now he still says, I don't like it, but rather than being serious denial and trying to push it away, it's kind of his acknowledgement. And, he doesn't have to say, yeah, but that's what I have to do. But it's kind of his reminder of learning to live the second best life.
Yeah. The one that is full of contamination and potential harm, and right.
And the one that exists and allows for fulfillment and enjoyment
That's
and a
right.
lot of good things, because the other one doesn't exist. The other one is the clean, sterile world that Luigi never gets to have, and he gets to be alone forever.
Right. Yeah. And I want to, let me just switch here. Hold on. I want to show, I just thought,
That's
this
cool.
was,
Yeah,
yeah,
thank
it's
you.
really fantastic. He's dedicating the rest of his day to learning to accept that I live in an imperfect world. And he says that he was trying to start doing ERP without the acceptance first, which is a very common mistake. I think even when people work with therapists, it's a really
Well, no,
common
no, I was going to say the thing that's really sad is there are so many therapists who make this mistake, so that so many sufferers are needlessly getting misdirected treatment that, could lead them to feel treatment doesn't work, because it is true. The wrong treatment doesn't work.
right.
Is that why you always repeat this part? Every podcast you always talk about, are you willing to live with uncertainty? Are you willing to answer the question? And I don't mean that as a slight. This is sincerely an observation. I'm actually not being a smartass for once.
Well,
You talk about it all the time because it's
It is.
needed.
It's important.
People
It's
forget it.
important.
well, I
for
talk about
everyone
it. I
to
think I
remember.
talk about it for two major reasons.
Yeah.
It is amazing to me how frequently I see this as a problem.
Yeah.
I mean, I see it as a problem when I'm doing supervision of people who have read my stuff and say they really love what I do, and they are not making sure the person's doing it. It's like,
Right.
okay, so they'll talk about a case and a problem, and I say, like, but they haven't accepted treatment. So one reason is I keep seeing it as a problem, and the second reason goes back to the fact of what I said earlier. I have a limited repertoire, so I've got to use what I got.
But it's true. I think that there's a tendency for therapists, right, to want to skip ahead to exposures before really doing the hard work of encouraging the acceptance of uncertainty.
Designing exposures is actually almost all the time pretty easy. The art is getting people to do it.
Yeah.
And too many people act like it's a little cookbook and we can just like do it.
Right.
It reminds me when I was in grad school, sometimes we would have, because this goes back before there was cognitive behavior therapy. This goes back to the days when there was behavior therapy and cognitive therapy. They were separate. But anyway, we'd have these radical behavior therapist students who thought just like everything's behavioral and we don't have to worry about thinking.
Right.
So what the program would do is they would give them weight control cases, because there's a incredibly wonderful, beautiful technology of weight control and what to do. And they'd give them, because the technology is beautiful, but getting somebody to do it, so it was kind of like purposely causing them to fail, because it turns out, a manual's not enough.
Right. Absolutely.
We're good for something.
So
we're not replaced yet.
Were there any other parts of Luigi's question that we didn't touch on?
I don't.
No, I think we've covered everything.
I think we have. Oh, have we covered everything? Is that it?
Well, I'm looking at the list, and I think yes, I think we'd have to admit that we might be done this episode.
Yeah, I think so.
But if it's a streaming episode, don't we have to keep going? I don't know. I've never done this.
Well, we don't have to do anything. But I think I'm thankful, and I think when it's restreamed, I think this is a good closing point, so that people don't go like, so now why don't they shut up? Like, I've got it.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, yeah, I agree. And I just also want to say thank you so much, Luigi, Valentina, and our former commenter, Gina, all of our viewers who are so willing to ask us questions and post comments. I think that Luigi was absolutely right, that all of his questions are things that a lot of people with OCD are really struck by and struggle with in their own treatment. And it gave us an opportunity to respond to those things. So thank you so much. And thank you to everybody who tuned in and will tune in the future. And thank you to my wonderful co-hosts. And we'll see you next time. Okay.
Take care.
Thank you, Katie. Thanks, everybody.